Hello and welcome to the Becoming Your Highest Self podcast. I'm your host, Macy Renee, and we are going on a journey together, my friend. If you've been looking for a podcast geared towards your growth, self-awareness, navigating your brain's daily mind drama, and deep inner work to become your highest and best self, you are in the perfect place. Let's get started. Hello, my friends. I'm so excited to have you back on another episode of Becoming Your Highest Self podcast. It has actually been 4 weeks since I've recorded an episode because the last 4 that you actually listened to, I recorded those all in one day so that I could have them released to you week after week while I was in my hometown of Louisville / Frankfort, Kentucky. So it's been a hot minute since I've actually been at the mic, and I've really missed it. I wanted to catch you all up on everything and kind of share more about how this has all transpired. I'm still getting messages like, wait, what? You did what? You moved to Las Vegas? Hold on. And that is the truth. We did. We moved to Las Vegas. So if you listen to the episode called Taking Risks, you will hear more about that. But to give you kind of a snapshot, because I didn't really talk about all of this in that episode, this year has been such a year of growth. I can't tell you how many times I've been excited, but how many times I've also sobbed, like painful sobbing, because of all of the transition and newness and the challenges of that. When you're working towards becoming your highest self, and I actually want to address this, I was working with some new clients a few weeks back that took advantage of like the 6-week coaching special while I was getting my life coach school certification. And I was finishing up a call with a client, and she said, so when I'm doing all of this highest self work, am I just aiming to be perfect? It was something along those lines, not to say that that's her exact question, but it was something along the lines of, am I aiming for perfectionism when I'm aiming to reach my highest self? And I actually said to her, I love that you asked that question, and I need to talk about it on a podcast, because becoming your highest self is not about reaching perfection at all whatsoever. It's nothing in regards to that. Your highest self is unique to you, and to me, my definition of highest self is coming home to yourself, being more self-aware of who you are, where you are, how you're getting the results you're getting in your life. So if you're unhappy, if you're not fulfilled, if you know that you could be better, respond better, have more, do more, and you genuinely want that, and you're looking at here's where I am versus here's where I'd like to be, there is room there for you to step into your highest self. I feel like intuitively we are guided to come more and more home to ourselves. But in order to reach that and really come home to ourselves, there is a level of inner work that must be done. We have to heal the past. We have to go through, revisiting some of that trauma and breaking cycles moving forward. We have to know where our faults lie. We have to know where we self-sabotage, where our mindset could be stronger. In order to grow into what we want or who we want to be, we have to bring awareness to why and how we're not there yet. Okay, so there's always this gap of here's who I know I can be when I am showing up as my best self, and then here is where I'm currently at because I feel limited, I feel afraid, I feel scared, and then there's all the work in the middle. And all the work in the middle is where the magic happens, and why I'm such an advocate of coaching, because coaching addresses all of the gap work in the middle. So it could be, and the beautiful thing is everybody's highest self can look so different. It could be you being your highest self as a mother, meaning that you're very present, that you listen to your kids, that you allow them to be their individual selves without molding them into who you want them to be, right? It could be awareness around that. It could be awareness around raising them differently, than you were if you came from a trauma background. It could be going after your dream, even if you're in your 50s and, not having the mindset that it's too late or that it's going to be too difficult for you, like starting right where you are. Highest self is so unique to every single individual, and it doesn't mean that you're running for perfection, because perfection is subjective anyways. If you ask one person, what's the perfect wife or what's the perfect husband, they'll give you their definition of quote, quote, perfect. And if you ask somebody else, they'll give you a completely different definition of quote, quote, perfect. So perfectionism and perfect is so unique and subjective to your own definition of that. And highest self-work is really about coming home to yourself and really having a greater, more profound awareness of who you are, knowing who you can become should you want to do that work, and then getting to work to become that version of yourself way before you're ready. Then you will blink, and one day you'll look back and you'll realize in that process you've become your highest self year after year after year. You just keep getting better. And so that's kind of been our journey, my husband and I's journey in the last year. But even this time last year, so October of 2020, we had no idea that we were going to move. We had talked about moving to Las Vegas for probably the last 3 years because his cousin lives here. And it was kind of one of those things we toyed around with his cousin, as well as ourselves. Like, we all grew up in Louisville, Kentucky our entire life. And one day his cousin just upped and moved. He just upped and moved and texted the family and was like, hey, just moved to Vegas. Just wanted to let you know I love you. Bye. And we were like, what? What's in Vegas? Why is he moving like that? And he never came back. He loved it here. And he would tell my husband all the time, I really think you would love it getting out of the state. Like, it's just so different. Like, Kentucky's got its greatness, obviously, and I will always love that I'm a Kentucky girl. But he just expressed that the world outside of where you currently live, and this probably stands true for wherever you live, is so different. Because if you think about even in every region and different parts of the world, people have different cultures, different experiences, different beliefs, different practices, different religions, all of these things that make us unique as human beings. And to be able to surround yourself by different things opens and expands your mind. So it's very easy, if you've been in the same place your entire life with the same people your entire life, to stay exactly as you are and as you've been. But whenever you move out of that normalcy, that's why it's so scary, right? You're moving out of everything familiar, but you gain a lot of new perspective, new ideas, new belief systems. Your belief systems may even get challenged, and you get to decide what really is you, what really does feel true to you. And I think it brings you even further in home to yourself when your mind gets to be expanded and see things it hasn't seen before. So that's a pretty amazing thing. But we had talked about this for about 3 years, and pulling the trigger was just the hardest part, because we really wanted security, and as does everyone else. You want a secure paycheck. You want to know your guaranteed income. You want health insurance. You want retirement. You want all of these things. And I will say that for me, it was probably way easier to jump, because even as an occupational therapist with both a bachelor's degree and master's degree, in the line of work that I did, working with birth to age 3 kids, they didn't offer retirement. They didn't offer health insurance. I was an independent contractor, and I have been an independent contractor since 2011. So the last time I actually worked for someone where there was a boss over me, right, telling me what I needed to do, was 2010, when I was like 18 years old. And for me, I realized very quickly that wasn't for me. I have a lot of respect for people who do that and enjoy it. Even for me, I have always kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit in my body, and I'm pretty self-sufficient. I know what needs to be done, and I don't need someone to remind me to do it or push me to do it a lot of times. And so as soon as I, had the retail experience at 18 years old, I remember going home and telling my grandma, like, I know I can't spend the rest of my life doing what I'm doing now. It's not going to work. I have to go do something else. And so, of course, I went through college and picked jobs that allowed me to choose my own work schedule and be contracted. And so there's a catch-22 with that as well, right? Like, no retirement, no insurance, having to take the taxes out myself, and not everybody can be responsible and do that. I've also learned along the way, right? I've made mistakes when I was younger about mismanaging my money and getting into situations where I was like, oh God, I'm going to have to learn and grow and become more responsible. So I realized that that's not for everyone, but my husband had all of that set up, and we could really look at the next 40 years of our lives and be pretty content. That's really it. We could have been pretty content. We knew, at some point we would start a family and we could stay in the careers that we were in, and we could map out financially and in a pretty predictable manner. We could map out exactly what life would look like 40 years from now. And we both just had way too many conversations about that was not what we wanted long term. That's the days that we were living, even just last year, were not days we wanted to keep having for the next 40 years if we didn't change, grow, evolve, and go after our dreams. And one of my favorite quotes of all time is something along the lines of like, whenever I meet my maker, meet God, I want to be able to say that I used every talent he gave me. And that's really true for me. I want to push myself and see what is possible and what I'm made of. And I want to be able to leave that trail behind me for other people to know what is possible for them when they choose themselves and jump out of the plane, even though there's a lot of fear of if your parachute is even going to open. So I understand so deeply how terrifying it is. So last year, October 2020, we had no idea we were moving. When January got started this year, we had more conversations about, do we want this to be our year next year too? And a lot of like misery came over our bodies, like, oh God, I just can't do another year like this. Not that we're living horrible lives right now, but there's more out there. We could feel it in our bones. There's gotta be more than just this. We can't just deal with this for the next 40 years. So we started having conversations, and then a lot of times after the conversation, we would both kind of back out, go to our comfort zone. And then finally, one day, I just started packing boxes, and my husband came home from work and was like, what the heck are you doing? And I was like, I'm packing boxes because this is it. Like, we have to go for it. We've been talking about it for several years. We've never done it. If we don't pack the boxes, it's not going to be real. And so I just let him kind of have his panic attack on the couch, and I proceeded to start packing up our house, knowing that we were going to sell it, and that he'd eventually get on board. And even though that was scary for me, because I'm very much a family girl, I'm with my friends almost on a weekly basis a lot of times, or at least a monthly basis when I can be and when their schedules allow. And so I knew that as far as the relationships that I hold back at home, that it was going to be challenging to leave all of that behind. But I also knew that it was important for my husband to face his fears and chase his dreams that he's been talking about for years and putting on the back burner. And partially the reason that he's done that is because I started my business 3 years ago, and with a business, there are ups and downs. Like, there are great months where you're making great money and sustaining your life. And then there are other months where you can have zero and multiple months of zero. And his job always helped pick up any slack where my business would maybe fall, or if I was, being an independent contractor, if my OT caseload went down and things got rough every now and then, his salary would help because we split everything 50-50. That's just what works for us and what we choose to do in our marriage and relationship and have since we've been together, which is 12 years. And so he made a lot of sacrifices even for me to go after my coaching business and my dreams. And then whenever I got kind of not let go, what's the word I'm looking for? Whenever I couldn't work because of COVID, because they wouldn't let us go into the homes anymore, laid off, I guess you could say, it was really, really challenging because all I had to rely on at that point was my business, but my business wasn't and hadn't been treated at that point as a full-time business, so the money wasn't consistent. So I experienced earlier this year, I had my first 10K month, which is incredible, but then I also had several months where it was 0, 0, 0, 0, and to tell you that was terrifying. I'm just going to put it out there. That was absolutely terrifying. And I had a lot of moments where I just had to surrender that what we were doing was going to pay off and work out, even though it was super scary. And so all of this to say, here is what I really want you to take away from this podcast, because the title of it is Who Before How. I often get asked, how do I do X, Y, and Z? How do I make my marriage better? How do I become a better parent? How do I make more money at the job I've been at for 15 years? How do I have a better relationship with my son-in-law or my daughter-in-law? How do I start this business? How do I get more clients? How? That's always the question that most people ask is, how do I do it? How do you start the podcast? How do you get clients? How do you do all of these things? And it's never how. If you're asking how, you're asking the wrong question. That's the truth. Stop asking how. It's about who. That's what we need to ask ourselves. Who? I learned that from my coach a few years ago, listening to one of her coaching modules, and she talked about how it was so important to ask yourself the question, who before how? And her whole meaning behind that is that who is who you're becoming to achieve the things that you want. So when you're asking, like, how do I become a better parent, instead of asking, how do I become a better parent or more present parent, who do you have to be in order to do that? How do you show up, right? Like, that's ultimately what ties into the who, is how are you showing up? How are you showing up? Who are you being in any given moment? So when I'm thinking of going after my dreams and, I want to ask the questions, well, how am I going to make 6 figures in my business? How do I need to create, my emails, or how do I need to design a program to make sure that I'm successful? I've stopped asking those questions because I think about who I have to become first. And who I have to become first is the person that knows exactly what she's doing and trusts in herself, that turns inward to ask herself that inner wisdom. And when I do that and I'm focused on who I'm being and who I'm becoming first, the how falls into place. I just immediately know what needs to be done. Okay, so that's really important, is who are you going to be? So it was like, how are we going to make all of this work? How are we going to sell our Kentucky house and move to Vegas? How are we going to make money if, my husband's now an entrepreneur in real estate working for Keller Williams in Southern Nevada. So P.S., if you need a home sold, shameless plug, if you need a home sold or are going to buy, please reach out to me because I can connect you to a great real estate agent, aka my husband. But anyways, before it was really easy to ask, like, how is this going to work? How are we going to make money as entrepreneurs? And then we had to realize that it's who are we going to become in order to be those successful people. And who we need to be are people that jump, that face their fears, that act on it before they're ready. So we became those people. We started packing the boxes. We put our house up on the market. We sold our house. We moved in with family, which is not always the easiest thing to do. I then started the life coach school certification in July, but because my grandparents live on a 20-acre farm, I didn't have internet. And a part of the huge requirement for the life coach school certification is that you have to have stable internet. It's a $25,000 investment to be able to get certified there for 3 months. And I had to have good internet because I had the opportunity to be certified. And so I started living out of my suitcase literally up until last week. Like, I just stopped living out of a suitcase since July. So that's July, August, September, October. 4 months I've lived out of a suitcase, rotating 5 or 6 shirts, 2 jumpsuits, and like 3 or 4 pairs of leggings. Seriously. Who before how? That is what I've had to focus on, is who I'm being in order to get what I want long term. It's not like, how am I going to make it all work, or how. It's just like, who do I have to be? I have to be this person that's okay with traveling an hour every single week, living in 2 different households to make it work because my grandparents' house doesn't have internet, or at least good, reliable internet to be able to do client calls and life coach school certification. And then instead of thinking, how am I going to pass? How is this going to work? This is so crazy. I had to think of who I needed to be in order to show up and be successful, and how I wanted to, show up to class coaching in front of people that I have grown to love, respect, and admire. And then on top of that, drive, every single week, live in 2 different households to make it work. And then drive 4 days in a moving truck with my husband and settle down in, an apartment where we went from living in 1,600 square feet in Kentucky, paying a $1,300 mortgage, to moving to 700 square feet, paying $1,500 a month in rent, both working for ourselves, scared shitless, to be quite frank, and, trusting in who we're becoming in order to make it all work. And it hasn't been easy. And here's the thing, I don't want to just show you guys, I said this on a Facebook Live yesterday, I think, or the day before. I don't want to just get in here in the podcast or on my Facebook Lives or even in my post and show all the success and the fun stuff. It matters to me to be real and raw and transparent and vulnerable. That really matters to me, that you all get to see all of it, because I know that whenever you're going for your highest self, it's not always going to be easy. And the how never matters as much as the who. And I tell my clients that all the time, because I recently worked with a client. I don't think she'll mind me talking about this, but she's been talking about wanting a raise at her job forever. She's been there for several years. And she would say, well, how, I don't think that they're going to listen. How am I going to get a raise when they haven't given it to me in X amount of years? And I would say it's not about the how, it's about the who. It's about how you're showing up. What energy are you bringing to the table? Who are you being in those moments? And yes, that was my dog, because again, we've moved from our own little house on a good amount of acreage to an apartment where maintenance just showed up to my next door neighbor, and he is barking and letting us know how he feels about it. And there's also someone outside doing lawn work or whatever. We don't even have grass. We have dirt and rocks. So I'm not even sure what's happening. But yeah, it's different. It's a change. But even, speaking to her, it was like, who do you need to become to get that raise? Who do you imagine yourself being when you get that raise? Those are the important questions to ask. And she was able to get exactly what she wanted because she has become that person. That's the work we've been doing together, is helping her get very clear on that version of herself, to become that version for herself, okay, her highest self. And that energetic matched up with exactly who she desired to be, and she got exactly what she wanted. So it's absolutely possible when you stop asking how is it going to happen and how's it going to work, to who do I need to be in this moment right now to make it work. Who would I be right now as my highest self? And you show up as your highest self, not who you've been, because who you've been has only gotten you to where you are right now. So you have to be a different version of yourself that you're not used to being in order to get a different result than what you've currently experienced. For us, that was a huge transition, a huge move, but it has, been so worth it. We can already see the positive experiences from doing so. And it's going to look different for your life too. Doesn't mean that, in order for your life to change, you have to move to a different state and drive a moving van, for 4 days somewhere else, or start your own business or be entrepreneurs. You don't have to do any of that. My clients are proof of that every day. They get exactly what they're wanting in their own unique, wonderfully beautiful individual lives because they're doing the work of becoming their highest self. So that's the thing. Who before how, and a little catch up on what's been going on in our life. And I hope that this episode helps you. I've truly loved or missed, of course I love talking to you guys, but I've truly missed talking to you guys on a weekly basis and catching you guys up on a weekly basis, because again, those last 4 episodes you listened to were all recorded in one day before I went back home to Kentucky. And it's been interesting, right? And there are sacrifices, like my sister is having her first child. I won't be able to be there every single day to help her. And that was obviously very devastating. Like as soon as we announced basically to my family that we were moving to Las Vegas, it was like 2 weeks later, she announced that she was pregnant. And so that was it was so sad. I mean, it was really sad because I had always imagined being super active in my nieces or nephews' lives. And so I'm obviously going to, if I'm asking, instead of asking, how am I going to be present for them? How am I going to make sure that they know me? How am I going to make sure that I'm being the best aunt or aunt for them? I think of who I need to become to be that person. Like, who do I want to be as an aunt? How exactly do I want to show up in the world in regards to my relationship with my sister being far away, right? Both of my sisters and my new niece that's on her way here in the next month or two. So go always back to who before how. And I hope that this helps you. I'm going to get off of here so you don't have to listen to the maintenance guys cutting down a tree or doing whatever they're doing with what sounds like a chainsaw. But I love you guys, and I'll speak to you soon.